Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Bizarre Bureau. Have you ever walked into a room and sworn something was different, even though no one else touched it? Or maybe you remember a detail from a movie or a song lyric so vividly, only to find out it was never that way at all. You might just brush it off as a faulty memory, a little brain glitch. But what if I told you it could be something much, much stranger? What if you're not just misremembering? What if you're experiencing a timeline drift? This isn't about massive, earth-shattering changes. It's not about waking up to find dinosaurs roaming your backyard. Timeline drift is subtle, almost imperceptible. It's the slow, creeping sensation that your personal reality is gradually moving out of sync with the world around you. It's like your life is a movie, and someone is replacing single frames, one by one. At first, you don't notice. But over time, the changes accumulate, and you re-left with this unsettling feeling that the world you reliving in is unquite the one you started in. Let's dive into some classic examples you might have heard of. The most famous one is probably the Mandela effect. Many people swear they remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. They recall seeing news reports, maybe even a televised funeral. But in our current reality, he was released, became president of South Africa, and passed away in 2030. How can so many people from different parts of the world share the exact same false memory? Another popular one is the Berenstain Bears. Or is it Berenstein? A massive number of people, myself included, clearly remember the name of this beloved children's book series spelled with an E at the end. Go look at a book cover now. It's always been Berenstain with an A. There's no record of it ever being spelled with an E, yet the collective memory persists. It's the same with the famous line from Star Wars. Ask anyone what Darth Vader says to Luke, and they'll likely say, "Luke, I am your father." But the actual line is, "No, I am your father." The name Luke is never spoken in that sentence. Weird, right? Skeptics will tell you this is all just a case of confabulation. Our brains creating false memories by mixing up different pieces of information. They'll argue that Berenstein is a more common spelling for a name, so our brains just defaulted to it. Or that we mentally insert Luke into the Star Wars quote because it makes more contextual sense. And sure, that's a plausible explanation. Memory is a fragile, unreliable thing. But does it explain everything? That's where the idea of timeline drift gets really interesting. The theory suggests that we aren't all living in one single static timeline. Instead, imagine an infinite number of parallel universes, each one slightly different from the next. In one universe, Nelson Mandela did die in prison. In another, the book series really was called the Berenstain Bears. The theory of timeline drift proposes that for some unknown reason, individuals or even groups of people can suddenly slide or drift between these adjacent timelines. You don't experience a sudden jolt. You don't wake up in a different house with a different family. Instead, you carry your memories from your original timeline into a new one where a few minor details are off. The world changes around you, but your memory of the old world remains intact. You remember the E in Berenstein because that's where you came from. The rest of the world doesn't remember it that way because they've always been in the A timeline. You are the anomaly. You are the one who drifted. Think of it like a river with countless currents flowing side by side. Most of us stay in our current, flowing along with everyone else. But occasionally, someone might get nudged by a ripple and drift into the next current over. The scenery on the riverbank looks almost identical, but if you look closely, you'll notice a tree that wasn't there before, or a rock that's a slightly different shape. These are the small discrepancies of a timeline drift. Now, let's get personal. Forget the big, famous examples for a moment. Think about your own life. Have you ever lost your keys, torn your house apart looking for them, only to have them reappear in the most obvious spot you know you checked a dozen times? You might think you just overlooked them. But what if, for a brief period, you drifted into a timeline where your keys weren't on that hook? Then just as quietly, you drifted back, and there they were, exactly where they were supposed to be. Or what about conversations? You have a distinct memory of telling your friend about an important event. You remember the time, the place, the exact words you used, but your friend has absolutely no recollection of the conversation. They insist it never happened. Is it more likely that one of you has a perfect memory and the other a completely faulty one? Or is it possible that you had that conversation in a slightly different reality, and you're the only one who brought that memory across the divide? These personal glitches, sometimes called glitches in the matrix, are the bread and butter of timeline drift theory. They're the little breadcrumbs that suggest reality might be more fluid than we think. It's the traffic light that you swear was red, but is suddenly green. It's the shirt you were sure was in the laundry that is now hanging clean in your closet. These aren't life-altering events, but they're deeply unsettling because they challenge our fundamental trust in our own senses and memory. They make us question the very stability of the world we inhabit. So, what could possibly be causing this drift? That's the billion-dollar question, and there are no firm answers, only fascinating speculation. Some theories point to massive events that could send ripples through the fabric of space-time. For example, some people believe the activation of the Large Hadron Collider at CERN could be a culprit. The idea is that by smashing particles together at near the speed of light, we might be creating microscopic tears or fluctuations in reality, allowing for these subtle shifts between parallel universes. Others look to quantum mechanics. At the subatomic level, particles exist in a state of superposition. They can be in multiple places or states at once until they are observed. What if our consciousness is somehow tied to this quantum weirdness? Perhaps our own focus and observation lock in our reality, but when our attention wavers, we might inadvertently drift along a different probability path. In this view, reality isn't a fixed state, but a constantly shifting landscape of possibilities, and we are just navigating through it. Then there are more metaphysical explanations. Some believe our collective consciousness shapes reality. When a large enough group of people believes something to be true, it can create a powerful energetic current. If two different collective memories are strong enough, like with the Mandela effect, they might represent two distinct timeline currents running parallel to each other. Individuals might then find themselves shifting between these dominant currents. Of course, we have to acknowledge the psychological side. Our brains are designed to find patterns and create coherent narratives. When something doesn't fit, it can be deeply disturbing. The idea of a timeline drift might simply be a more comforting story we tell ourselves in the alternative, that our own minds are unreliable. It's perhaps easier to believe the universe changed than to believe your memory failed you. Cognitive dissonance, suggestion, and the power of the internet to spread and reinforce these shared memories are all powerful psychological factors that can't be ignored. But what makes the timeline drift theory so compelling is that it resonates with a feeling many of us have had. That feeling that something is just ... off. It validates that nagging suspicion in the back of your mind. It takes a personal, isolating experience, the feeling that you going crazy because you remember something no one else does, and turns it into a shared mysterious phenomenon. It suggests you're not alone. You might just be a traveler, a visitor from a world that was almost, but not quite, exactly like this one. Think about it. Every tiny choice you make, from turning left instead of right, to choosing tea instead of coffee, could theoretically splinter off a new timeline. With billions of people making trillions of choices every single day, the number of parallel realities becomes truly incomprehensible. In this vast multiverse, is it really so far-fetched to think that the boundaries between these near-identical worlds could be permeable? That a person could, without even realizing it, slip from one to another? Ultimately, there is no way to prove or disprove the existence of timeline drift. We have no instruments to detect it, no way to measure the changes. All we have are these shared anomalies, these personal glitches, and the unsettling feeling that reality isn't as solid as it seems. It remains a fascinating what-if scenario, a ghost story for the quantum age. So the next time you find your keys in a place you swear you already looked, or argue with a friend over a memory you're certain is correct, just take a moment. Don't just dismiss it. Consider the possibility. Maybe you're not forgetful. Maybe you're not mistaken. Maybe you just took a tiny, imperceptible step into a different timeline. Welcome to the neighborhood. What do you all think? Have you ever experienced something you call a timeline drift? A personal Mandela effect? Share your strangest glitches in the comments below. I'd love to read them. This is the Bizarre Bureau, where we know reality is often stranger than fiction. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Or in the next timeline. Stay curious.